Thank you for coming tonight. This is our medical careers discussion panel. Second time we've done this, and we are PEMS. PEMS is Peralta Engineering, Medicine, and Science. We bridge the gap between junior colleges and four-year schools. We make students stick to campus. We give them something to do beyond the class. Whether it's building a robot, and we have built 2 robots, or doing some science projects, we have a water testing project, some environmental science, outings to get exposure and connection to the professional world. We help students get to where they want to go. Tonight, we're going to have, I just want to thank Viet and Ansel for putting this together. And I am actually not going to ask any questions. Liz is going to ask the questions. And that's what this is all about, is getting students involved. So there you go. You even have a hot seat.
Okay, cool. Thanks for coming, guys. Sorry, this was thrown on me right at the last minute, so bear with me here. So if we can start by everyone just introducing yourself, and if you can say who you are, like what you're doing, and like just a couple of words about yourself. Do you want to start?
Hello, I'm Christina Pingle. I am a nurse practitioner. I was trained as a family nurse practitioner, but I work specifically in infectious diseases for a private medical consulting group. Prior to that, I was working for Alameda County Public Health Department in their communicable disease unit. And I did actually most of my nursing prerequisites at Santa Rosa Junior College. So I have love for City College.
Hey guys, my name is Mansoor Jamal. I'm an ER doctor. Just finished my training, my fellowship last year, so now I'm working out in the community.
My name's Deirdre McLaughlin. I'm a physical therapist, and I have a private practice in Berkeley and still volunteer at UC Berkeley with the student athletes there. So I do primarily outpatient sports medicine, sports injuries, backs, necks, all that kind of stuff.
I'm Karen Covert. I'm a home hospice nurse. I was a NICU nurse, neonatal intensive care nurse for a couple of years, and then I went into hospice, adult hospice. So I see people at home. And I'm deaf in one ear, so if the questions could be loud, that would be great.
Cool. Okay, so thank you guys so much for coming. We're going to start with just a couple of questions, and then we're going to open the floor to any questions you guys have. If you can't hear, just raise your hands and wave, and we'll try to talk louder. I'll try to talk louder. I'm kind of losing my voice because I watched the Warriors game last night and I screamed the whole time.
It was a great game.
Yeah, it was an amazing game. So I can't talk. So if you can't hear me, or you guys can't hear me, just let me know. So we're gonna start. Can you tell us life events and things that have happened to you, around you, that influence your decision to get where you are now? And you don't have to go in order, you can just talk.
I'll start.
Yeah.
So I was a non-licensed social worker at San Francisco General, and I thought I was going to go into social work school, and I had a couple of social workers and a couple of nurses pull me aside and say, hey, I think nursing would be a good fit for you. So I planned on going into HIV case management, but as I was going through nursing school and did all of my clinicals, I realized that I loved pediatrics. So I started there, and I did some pediatric palliative care, and then I had my own health issues, so I was out of work for a year or so. And when I went back into it, I decided to go into adult hospice care, and I really love that.
I always felt like growing up I wanted to do something that would help somebody I thought like a vet at first, and then I realized I'd have to bring all the animals home with me, so I forget that. Not to bring all my patients home with me, but so I sort of just kind of went in that line of like learning about what you're doing, like learning about what different career options there were. What is a physical therapist? What's an occupational therapist? I didn't really know, but I just kept following that and ended up finding physical therapy, which seemed like a good mix of medicine and getting patients out, doing what they want to do, helping them reach their goals, whatever. I think you can do that I've worked in different age groups as I've gone through my career, which is a really nice thing, and I think I'm pretty happy where I am now. But so
I guess for me, I've always been kind of a math and science geek, and I was always very curious about kind of how the human body worked, and that was pretty much the natural progression when I went to college, studied science-y type stuff, and then ended up going to medical school after that.
I was 19. I was at UC Davis for my undergrad, and I was at Planned Parenthood, and I had a super awesome interaction with my NP, and decided that that's what I wanted to do. I really liked the program I was in at Davis, and they didn't have a nursing program, so I just finished it out and took like the longest track to get to become an NP. But it was great. I went to SF State for the master's, and then back again for the postmasters. As far as infectious diseases, I graduated from nursing school when there were no nursing jobs, and so I worked for free there for a while, and then they finally gave me a job. But it actually helped me get my job in infectious diseases now. So it's just kind of life dropped me into ID, and it's pretty cool.
So on the road to basically get where you are now, what did you feel like were the greatest challenges that you faced?
I can just continue from where I was.
Yes, do that.
When I started school, and you hear all the time like, oh, there's a nursing shortage, and there isn't as much now, but there definitely wasn't when we got out. It was in 2010. So it was just a lot of hustling and a lot of networking that I thought I would need to do in healthcare. Like, oh, it's merit-based, but it was a lot of people getting jobs because they knew people, and you had to like fight for internships and for jobs, and you still do now, even if there is a demand. But I think it was sort of that, they're just the real world stuff. It's not just that you can learn things in class. I was pretty naive to that, but it's just something to keep in mind, that it's not easy, and you have to networking. I think networking was the biggest part. And then you can have a dream, but make it a little bit flexible if you can, given the circumstances. And I know a lot of people have different backgrounds, different life, like things pulling them in different directions. So you have to just don't let go of the dream, but be flexible and where the path that you might have to take to get there.
I guess the biggest challenge is, for me, was the fact that it's competitive, and you have to do well. And so there's a lot of discipline and focus and sacrifice involved, and you have to put yourself around the right people to help kind of get you to that point. So I remember when I applied to medical school, something like half of the people in America that applied into medical school didn't get in anywhere. So there's just not enough spots for the people that want to get in. So you really have to separate yourself. And that was the most difficult thing. And once you get in, you'll be fine. Pretty much everybody graduates, and it's a lot of work, but the hardest part's getting into medical school for sure.
I think one of my challenges was after I had graduated and started working, probably my second job, I really didn't like it very much. And I was coaching rowing at the time for like $500 a semester, and I loved it. And I thought, oh no, I have all these college loans, and I don't really like my job. And it just made me realize that I just had to find the right population to work with. So I kind of echoing the part about being flexible and just being open-minded, and you have to just keep moving in the direction that you think you like, and be resilient. And it turns out I just had the wrong group of clients to make me feel satisfied about my job, and that was a little scary at the time.
I think for me, in high school and when I did my undergraduate program, I was not very strong in math and science. I worked at that. That was really hard, and I didn't know if I could go into the medical field because there's so many science and math classes. I wasn't quite sure if I could do it. So I think just going for it anyway and trying it was the best thing.
So you guys all mentioned that it's a really competitive field, and I think we all know that. Is there anything in particular that you did to make yourself stand out above the competition? Because clearly you were all successful, and there's a lot of people that try to do this and don't.
Work hard.
Networking again for me. I mean, my first interview, I had to just like name drop. It was kind of I wouldn't call myself a sellout, but you build these networks, people can connect you with internships, potential, like even if it's just an informational interview with a company or a group that's not hiring, and then if you can name drop, like I had worked maybe sort of remotely with certain physicians that were well known in the community with certain diseases, so when I interviewed for my next job, just because those people were well known, it helped me get a job, and it looked like I was very interested in infectious diseases. I am now, but I mean, I kind of, you modify what they say your resume, your interview to fit this position that you're applying to, and maybe, I didn't graduate thinking I'm going to work in ID, but I'm super happy in it now, and so to stand out, I think you highlight the experience that you do have, even if it's not as much as they may need, but highlight it to show that that's where your interest may lie to fit that position. And yeah, networking and get as much under your belt as you can, which is hard if it's like an unpaid internship or something like that, but at least you're building those networks at that time.
Like I said, you just got to work your tail off, when everybody's having fun, you're working. That's the bottom line. It's a lot of discipline and sacrifice, and like I mentioned earlier, you have to surround yourself with like-minded individuals who have the same goals and aspirations as you, and that definitely helps push you. So I think that's the main thing. If you really want it that badly, then you get it. And I was just very determined.
Yeah, I think surrounding yourself with people who want to push you or can challenge you continues even in my career. You want to surround you. What I have is a physical therapy practice. I'm always practicing, so I'm always getting better, I hope. So as a student, and I think keeping that sense of learning and moving forward and trying to find someone who can help you, whether you're trying to get into medical school, PT school, or when you get out, just keep surrounding yourself with those people who will help teach you, because I'm trying to learn stuff still to be better. And that path of not just like, oh, I made it, I'm in, it's good, it's never good, right? It's always have to try to keep going and surround yourself with people who can help you.
I think that's one of the pros of being in a medical field, is that it's always challenging, there's always something else to learn. No one ever just has it, and I know everything there is to know. That doesn't exist. And that's really positive, because it always keeps you interested. You can always go into a different field. You can always get better, and that is really fun. And so I think finding good people and just kind of following your path wherever it goes. I think most of us kind of meander into what we end up doing, and it just happens to be who we know and who we met, and opportunities. Don't miss opportunities. And the other thing I would say is volunteering is really helpful. When you're doing your prerequisites, if there's any time to take up extra projects, that will help you stand out.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to build on that. I know there's a lot of pushing and a lot of competition, but Did you guys have mentors that helped you through the process, or family members, friends, professors?
I did. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
They were social workers actually, mostly. Was what I was in. They were coworkers, but who knew a lot about the medical. It was medical social workers who knew a lot about the medical field and could give support. And then I just developed a really close knit group of friends here at Laney. I did my prereqs at Laney, and followed those people, through nursing school, having that support.
Yeah, when I got into PT school, I ended up getting a work-study job at the physical therapy clinic that was at the university. And that was great to just even 10, 15 hours a week to have other PTs that I could talk to about things, or, I learned this, and also just to keep watching, well, what does a PT do? I mean, we didn't have to have volunteer hours. Ansel volunteers at my office, and we didn't have to do that when I went to school, so, which is great now that you have to do it, so you don't just get into school and think, I hate this job. So, which can happen. So after all that work, so I think having some PTs around me. So if you can volunteer at a PT clinic, at whatever you're interested in, a hospital, nursing, just to see one side of that, and then you have those people to talk to. They can become your mentor. I know if any of my students or people who volunteered with me called me up, I'd be happy to help them answer their questions or move them in a different field. If they say they don't want this, help them figure out another field. So we're out there and we're happy to help. There's professionals who are happy to help. So
Yeah, I mean, pretty much echoing the same sentiment. I don't think any of us would have got where we are today without having anybody help us. It takes a village, like they say. And I wouldn't be where I am today without a lot of friends and mentors that got me to the place where I am, the support of family. I mean, it takes a lot. It's not easy, but you have to also want it as well too. I mean, I don't come from a family of physicians. My dad's an actor, my mom's an office secretary, so I just wanted to do it, and I surrounded myself with people that also wanted to do it, and we did it, and that's the bottom line.
I think the transition from undergrad and junior college to nursing school, I didn't have a specific person. I tried to stay connected to professors, like my anatomy professor, but she wasn't, an NP. So it wasn't until I was in nursing school, my support group was just the people that I studied with, and then in NP school, when you have preceptorships that are required for school, I just found who I connected with the most. I had multiple preceptors, but some of them are more or less willing to be the person that can guide you. And a lot of what happens in school is the textbook stuff, and then there's, especially in healthcare, a lot of emotional stuff that comes up with that kind of intimate human interaction. And so I would use those mentors to help guide me through that stuff, the stuff that's not in the classroom. So it was helpful to have both.
So, I think all of your career choices involved a lot of stress in school, and now maybe involve a lot of stress in the job world. So how did you handle that stress in school and stay sane? And do you think that connects to how you handle the stress in the job world?
I bombed my first health assessment class. I think I failed calculus in undergrad. I mean, I'm smart, but things happen. I broke up with my boyfriend when I was a freshman, and then my first class in grad school, I realized how close I was to failing out, and I remembered how hard I worked to get there. So I just had to sort of restructure how I studied. It was totally different from my undergrad classes, and I had to just sort of find people who study the same way. And then, I let myself get really consumed by school, and you have to try to find balance if you can find the time. If you like to run, make sure you keep running. I take dance, and so if you have something outside of school, it makes life a little bit better. But like I said, people have a lot of things like family and jobs, so finding a way to have balance with the tough academics is really important, but easier said than done.
I mean, it's a different type of stress, obviously. The stress I deal with now is on a different scale. I deal with people's lives, and that's a much bigger stress than studying for an exam or, not doing as well in a class. But it's still stressful. There's a lot of expectations that you have to manage, and it's competitive, and there's people that, want to not see you do well. So it's a different type of stress. I think if you go through stress and you know how to manage it well, then you'll be fine. I work in a profession where if you get stressed out, it's not really for you because there's too much going on. So I feel like I'm not the type of person that gets stressed out really about anything. I think I just was lucky to not be like that. But you just deal with it, I guess. That's just the way I look at it.
I think as far as stress in school, I had a good group of kind of 3 or 4 friends that we would study together, and that was great because we had this one friend who would always ask, but why? Why it is that? We're like, we don't care. We just want to memorize it. Stop. Like, what? Why? And But like that was the best person to study with because that's like what I ask now when you come with your knee pain. It's like, okay, I'm not just going to fix your knee, but like, why do you have your knee? Why is your knee hurting you? So I think surrounding yourself with people who support you and like make you study when you don't want to, when you have other stuff. They're like, come on, we have this exam tomorrow. Come on, we got to study. Like you need those people around you. And then when you start working, I tried to pick a clinic where I knew there was good energy and good therapists that I could learn from. So I think that still applies. It's, networking, but also who you want to be with every day to help support you. The best you can do to pick those people.
I would agree with all of that. I think I'm really lucky. I have a super supportive family that will call me out if my life is out of balance, so that's really helpful to have that kind of check-in. And I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist, so I think finding people that you have fun with, it was a lot of it for me. And then I just learned to deal with stress by not doing it well for a little while, and then not feeling well afterwards, and then realizing I needed to get some other balance in my life. So definitely having some kind of physical outlet, physical activity for the stress, and just because you're sitting so many hours, sitting. Mm-hmm. So that was really helpful, and just having good people around and finding people who felt passionately about what we were studying was helpful. It can make you laugh.
So I know you guys can't like break HIPAA or whatever, but can you tell us? Do you want to tell us some exciting things that happen in your job, or like even describe an everyday event that happens to you, or something that happened yesterday?
What's the coolest thing you've ever seen in your job? Come on.
Yes. What have I told you? I can't remember anymore.
I
I never broke HIPAA though. No identifying him. Oh, so I did see some cool things when I was at the health department, but I didn't see them clinically with my eyeballs. It was more that it was reported to us. Like my favorite disease. This sounds really weird, but my favorite disease is meningococcal meningitis. But I mean, it's super gruesome when someone has it. But what I like about it is that I know. But it's a very clear and concise incubation period from the time of when the person gets it and when they would usually die, and the sequelae of clinical symptoms. So this is the sad part of it. So one example is I walked into work and there was a 25-year-old female who was out at a party. She worked in the healthcare field, like at a pediatric clinic or something, and Sunday night she came home from a date and was feeling ill, woke up the next morning, was vomiting, passed out, and then was dead 10 hours later. And she had meningococcal meningitis, and it's like something that you guys get shots for if you live in the dorms, but there's this strain that is not in the vaccine, and it's often the one that causes a lot of these issues. But so from that, we had to sort of backtrack within the potential incubation and exposure period of all the people she had contact with, and she had been at a club that weekend, and people it's spread through exchange of saliva and other bodily fluids. So she went to a club, and we had to give prophylactic antibiotics to someone who said, I didn't even know her, but somebody handed me a drink on my way out of the club, and it might have been hers. So she had to be treated and then monitored for the potential onset of symptoms. There was like bar food that people had been dipping things in. Anyone that touched that also had to be receive prophy. Thankfully, there were no secondary cases, but it was, I got a call from a PA at the ER saying, I have this person here. He said he went on a date with this girl and then she died. Like, she had we had to hunt down like who her potential other partners were, and people had to go through her phone. I mean, it's very sad, but also really interesting. And then a few weeks later, we had another like 27-year-old female who had the same thing, and she was bouncing off the walls ready to go home. So it's just interesting to see how people, even of the same age, can have a very different like level of sickness. I don't know if it was the same strain actually, but she did have a similar bacteria. But just how differently people can react, and sort of the repercussions of that disease, and the network of people that you have to follow afterward.
So do the rest of you have a favorite disease?
I don't like meningococcemia as much. Sorry. It's a pretty aggressive. I mean, from a microbiology standpoint, it's fascinating, but when it affects people,
That's what I meant.
it's dangerous and deadly. I mean, whatever you guys think happens in an ER happens in an ER. I mean, none of this is probably, the best stories aren't PG-13, stuff found in places where they aren't supposed to be, crazy stories. I mean, that's what we deal with on a daily basis. I've never watched an episode of it. I saw on Facebook somebody died yesterday on the show or something. Did I ruin that for you guys? I don't know who died, but a lot of people like Grey's Anatomy in tears. I don't know what happened. So I've never watched an episode, so I don't know. Sorry. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. It's fun though. You can talk to me later. I'll show you some pictures if you guys want.
Thankfully, my patients don't come in with things in different places they shouldn't be. Or I'd send them over to him. I mean, my job is, I'm pretty lucky. I think my job can be really rewarding. And whether that's like getting an athlete, I mean, I guess the craziest one was an athlete who had a part of her colon removed. And then 6 weeks later, she raced at the World Championships in rowing and got a silver medal. So, like, there are things like that which are crazy, and, I get to, like, help that athlete be able to stand up. Surgery's done, everything's good. Now she's, like, walking around like this, and we have to get her to stand up. So that's amazing, and a picture goes on the wall, but there's also a regular high school kid who has a back injury and wants to be able to race at, the Berkeley Half Marathon or something for them. So that's kind of the privilege of my job, is I really get to know people and then help them achieve whatever it is that is really important to them, whether it's a World Championships or playing for Cal or, I don't know, running a half marathon on their own that they've never thought they could do. So that is always interesting to me. It's like an interesting thing, but.
You ever run into those aggressive parents that are like, no, he's ready now, he's ready now?
We get that. We also get some coaches. So I'm working with an athlete right now at Cal who has a stress fracture, and the trainer and I are like, nope, like NC2As are in 2 weeks, so we have to just get you ready for NC2As. So no, you can't play this weekend. The coach's like, come on, like, why can't you play? It doesn't hurt. We're like, well, we know it doesn't hurt, but bones actually take longer to heal, even though it doesn't hurt. Right. So there's that pressure that you get from the coaching staff and from parents, but to get the athlete back on. And the athlete is like that too. Like, I want to play. It doesn't hurt. Like, I want to play. We're like, no, because if you mess it up, you're done, because there won't be any time to get better. So that's challenging and interesting. you just hope, all turns out really well, but everybody's different, every patient's different.
I don't know if I have any really interesting cases. I mean, when I was in the NICU, there were some really interesting chromosomal anomalies and things that seem like they're not connected, but they are, and so it's a bit like a puzzle trying to figure out, well, why do you have that and this, and how does that connect? So that is really interesting, but I think what I love about nursing is there's the technical piece. There's this medication, and I know this is what it does. This is how I can help you. You're suffering. You have whatever, and I can help you, and that's really satisfying. But I think the really needy part for me is the education piece and the family piece. I work in hospice, so my patients are dying, and walking families through that process and helping them get ready, helping them process through some of the big things they haven't dealt with yet is pretty amazing.
A lot of them, have you ever had a conversation with some of your patients that were on that kind of that time frame, and did they kind of get really deep, or has any one of them given
Every
you,
day.
like, is there any kind of particular advice that stood out to you that you can kind of recall maybe?
Sorry. Advice, just as far as living.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably. I would imagine.
I think it's kind of a cliche, but it's such a beautiful thing to be with someone in that moment. It's the depth of intimacy is pretty amazing to walk into someone's house and be with them and be with their family in that moment. I think the hardest thing for people, I can say that, is relationships that are not repaired in time, and that can be really hard. Sometimes you just can't repair a relationship, and that just is what it is, and you do your best with that. But I think sometimes people are just mad, and they're not ready to give that up, and that can be hard. So I think just repairing that. And I think the tricky part is trying to walk people through that process of what's happening. I've seen it, and I, for the most part, have an idea of what's coming next. So helping kind of move patients and families to a place where they can see the same thing is very satisfying. Yeah.
So we've got one more question, and then we're gonna open up the floor to everyone other than Jeff.
Sorry, guys.
And
That was really interesting.
so thank you. We're just bringing it back to the fact that we're community college students, so we have a really, really long way to go before we're where you guys are sitting. Is there something you would tell your community college self or your undergrad self that you really would have killed to know?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
I don't think I knew how often I would have to contact my community college professors for reference letters. So, stay in touch. Your professors have a lot of students, and if you're not doing something to stand out, and you're like, hey, I need a reference, it feels awkward, and it's awkward for everybody. You're gonna end up getting a generic letter if they say yes. So just stay in touch, build that relationship with that professor, especially if you feel like they could be helpful. So that was part of it. And yeah, just get really set in how you study. Transfer students always do better than freshmen and undergrads, so I think you guys are ahead of the game already. But it can knock you down if you don't know how to study. I'm surprised at how far I made it not knowing how to study that well. So I figured it out, but figure it out early. Sorry.
That's good. That's good.
I mean, the thing I would say, I guess, to you guys would be that it's a long road, but it's worth it, and you just have to take it step by step. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with one single step, and you just have to keep plugging away, and you'll eventually get there. You just have to have that focus and determination, And again, surround yourself with the right people. People, like I said, are like-minded and determined. You know, they say A students hang with A students, B students hang with B students, C students hang with C students. So you got to put yourself around people who you see are successful. Ask the folks that are doing well in class, what are their secrets? What are you guys doing to be successful? You know, it's not really that much of a secret. It's just working hard and really putting in the time and effort and sacrifice. But if you surround yourself with the people that know how to do it, it's going to make your life a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think just it's the long road, the long-term view of where you want to be in 10 years, which is kind of hard to imagine, but really 10 years hopefully is going to come and you're going to be 30 or 40 or 50 or 60, and where do you want to be? So it is a long road, but just keeping that focus of just keep on going, keep on studying, and at least, I don't know, it's probably not the same for every profession, but for PT, you're going to go to school, you're going to learn how to be a PT, you're going to pass your exam, and you're going to be a licensed PT. It doesn't really mean anything. You know, you want to, like, who are you going to be depends on who you surround yourself with. So if I'm going to interview one of you in 5 years for a job, I don't care where you went to school. I don't care if you went 4 years at Duke or 3 years here at Laney College and then somewhere else, Samuel Merritt, and then you're both physical therapists. So who is the most inquisitive person? Who's the person that's asking the most questions? Who's the person that seems like they're a hard worker? I'm not going to just hire someone because they went to a 4-year college and got full ride. I don't care, right? So it's who you are, really, not when did you decide to become whatever you decide to become. So I would just keep that in mind, because once you start applying for jobs and you finally finish, who you are is going to matter more than how long it took you to get there.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and I guess the only other thing I have to add is finding something you feel passionate about along the way. I think for me, I'm kind of do well focusing with what's right in front of me and get a little bit overwhelmed if I think about 20 years down the road. So I think find a way to enjoy what you're doing, be around people who are enjoying what you're doing. Is not that you're going to enjoy every class, but I think paying attention to the parts that are enjoyable and holding on to that piece will help push you through the other stuff.
I agree with what everyone said, but some more logistical things that I remembered. When you're applying to undergraduate programs or professional programs, sometimes there isn't a lot of continuity in the requirements or the length of program or the application due dates. And you have to look at your applications as another full-time job and keep track and remember like who you applied to and how long it's been, and if it's time to check in, and hound them, show up, you know, if it's in the area, and follow up with admissions, follow up with scholarship people, but keep track so that you know who you've already communicated with, who you need to follow up with. And especially for nursing, it's like I had 5 JC prereq classes for one program and 2 for another one. And so sometimes you have to just take these extra classes because there's 1 out of 5 schools that needs that, and it's frustrating, but yeah, find a system. I am terrible at spreadsheets, so I would just make document lists. But just find a way to organize it all to keep it straight and that you cover all your bases if you wanna get in.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Yes, you have a question.
Did you all work when you were in grad school?
I didn't hear the question.
Did you all work? And how often? Like how many hours did you work? And do you recommend that for your program?
I mean, I don't know if I'd recommend it. I got like pneumonia one year. I was like working and rowing and going to school, but I had to work. So I was working in the PT clinic, so that was good. So I was doing that, so I could feel like it was fit together. I don't know if I would have felt the same if I was working somewhere totally different. It might have been harder to go to work. So sometimes it was fun to go to work because I knew I might have a chance to ask one of the PTs about something we just did in school while I was folding the towels. But I don't know, working to me made me appreciate what I was doing even more, you know? So
And once you were out of school, were you invested in your work, in your free time? Was there any effort that you had to put into the job outside of work?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, for PTs, you have to do continuing education. I think for most health professionals, you always have to take classes. You still have to take classes to show that before you get your license renewed, that you're studying more. But yeah, I think definitely way more often than now, I would look at my patients the night before, like, oh, I have a shoulder rotator cuff surgery. What do I have to do for that? You know, I had the time. You don't have that luxury of time of like studying up the night before someone walks in your office. But I felt like I had to do that. So I was really prepared the next day, or if I couldn't figure something out, then I'd go home and say, God, before this client comes in on Thursday, I really need to figure out what I'm going to do. And I still do that. If there's a client, I mean, I don't know everything, so I still will say, I'm going to look that up or talk to some people and get back to you. So that's, I think, why you have to like it.
Yeah.
Because if you want to be good at it, you have to keep studying and keep learning. So if you don't like it, then it's work. If you like it, it's not really work. You know.
So it's not like where everything's in front of you at the table, where whenever you get to work, you have to keep putting the effort in to keep on the cutting edge.
Yeah, I think if you want to be good at it, right? If you feel good about yourself, and if I feel like I'm kind of stuck, or I have these shoulders and I'm not sure what I feel like I haven't gotten them as good as I want to get them. Maybe I should take a shoulder class and see if there's something else out there that I could learn. So surrounding yourself with other people is good in your job, whatever it is, nursing, ER, like, infectious disease. How did you figure that out? So that's the good part about surrounding yourself with other people, and always knowing that you don't know everything. And I had a PT once who said, like, if you don't know the answer, don't be afraid to get the book. You don't want to mess up and act like you know everything and then screw that patient up. Like, it's way better to say, I haven't seen this in a while, so I'm just going to grab this book, this anatomy book, and let's look this up. Where does it hurt? And at least you're doing the best for the patients. And that can be hard in the beginning because you feel like so new and, I don't want to get the book out because I really should know this answer. But, you do have to keep working at it. But is it work or is it interesting? Mopping the floor is kind of work, but...
How did you know that this is what you wanted to do? And did you take a Myers-Briggs test? Were you just people who you were surrounded by? Like, what was your aha moment? Like, this is what I want to do. I want to be a PT. I want to be a surgeon. I want to be a nurse. Or, like, what was it that you realized, oh, this is what my passion is?
I think I had one, to be honest. I'm sorry, I don't think it happens like that for a lot of people. I think it's just a goal that you set for yourself and you try to reach that goal. It wasn't really anything that anybody told me. I just was interested in it. But some people, when they write their personal statements and they're very anecdotal and, this is what happened and this is what motivated me to get to this point. Yeah, maybe. For those folks, but it doesn't happen like that to everybody. And if you find your passion, like she was saying earlier, then just go pursue it. And work hard and sacrifice and be dedicated. That's it.
Can I answer that too? From my side of things, I totally did not have that through school. I had good people surrounding me that said, I think this might be a good fit for you, and I knew generally I liked kind of social science-y kind of arena, so I knew generally I wanted to do something in social work or nursing, somewhere in that area. But I didn't have that, like, I feel so excited about this until I actually was in nursing for a little while, and some of the jitters went away. I started feeling slightly more comfortable, and then it was like, oh my God, I'm so lucky I'm in this. And then felt really passionate, but I didn't have that in school. It was just like, I'm going to do the next step because I think this is what I want. I'm going to try it out.
If I can answer, I think we've all said this in different ways, but finding what you like to do. So I kind of like the idea of medicine, right? Like being a vet or helping people and exploring it. And I almost had the opposite. In my second year of undergrad, there was an introduction to occupational therapy. I didn't really know really what it was, but like, oh, that sounds like what I want to do. I read it, and I got into the class, and I was like, this is the wrong class. Like, just felt like I got on the wrong bus and I was trapped. So if you volunteer at places, you might get that feeling like, oh, I think I want to do PT, and then you go volunteer, you're like, oh, this is like so boring. This is so boring. This is not it. But you're all here because you think you want to do something medical. So I think, yeah, talk to us or find people you can volunteer with and observe, and then you might find like, oh, that's what I don't really know what she does for work every day. Like, so I wouldn't know to say I want to be a hospice nurse. I kind of know about it. I've been in palliative care facilities, but I'd have to like go and watch her do her work and say, yeah, that's actually something I'd like to do next. So
To build on that, I did have my aha moment when I said I was a patient at Planned Parenthood. I knew I wanted to be in medicine in some way, wasn't sure if I wanted to apply to med school, and I just had this interaction with the NP. And I remember very vividly, she was explaining to me like what the vagina does and how it changes shape when you have sex. And I was like, oh my God, she's so smart, but totally dumbed it down for me. And as a patient, I really felt, not that I don't know what my vagina is doing, but it was like she really made me feel comfortable having that conversation, and I saw myself in that role. So like if you have PT or a moment where you're like, this person is great, could I do that for myself? Or I mean, that could be your aha moment potentially. You know, we're all patients at some point. It usually sucks when you are, but you might have a good interaction with somebody, and I think that's a good moment to see if like maybe this is what I want. And you have someone right there to be like, how did you become a PT? You know, so.
Jeff, did you still have a question?
Oh yeah.
You
First
have
of
lots
all,
of questions.
a friend of mine told me what actually happened in Grey's Anatomy.
I don't. You might not want to ruin it for
So-
folks
so
who are interested and haven't
my
seen
thing
it.
is, you said earlier, it doesn't happen that way all the time for every single person having the aha moment, and that's understandable. But when did you decide you wanted to make being a doctor your goal? And if you did have a particular time when you decided that, did you already have your specialty in mind as well? Because me myself, I'm pre-med also, and I do want to become a doctor. But as far as specialty-wise, I have not seen the different kind of fields that do intrigue me. So I'm kind of interested in your answer.
Right. I think when you decide on a specialty, you have to be in medical school first. You really have to sort of see what everybody does on a daily basis, I think. So don't worry about that. Get in. That's the most important thing. In terms of when I decided I was going to pursue it, I think it's probably late in high school. I, just did well in high school and went to college and was like, I'm going to try this and see if I can do it. I didn't really have much of a template because I didn't know anybody. Like, I'm the only physician in my family. So I had a lot of sort of, I needed to look towards friends who were going through down the same path as well too. And that's what I was mentioning earlier. So it was more of like I mentioned, I kind of liked the math and science stuff. I was always interested in the human body and physiology. I was a biochemistry major. I kind of enjoyed all of that stuff. And for me, I guess the natural progression of all of that would be, hey, try to be, go to medical school. I mean, I'm a pretty competitive guy at baseline, so I was like, you know what, I'm going to try to do this. And it worked out, but there were a lot of bumps in the road. It was not easy by any means. And I know a lot of people that tried and, they just didn't put forth the same amount of effort, to be honest. I mean, they're probably a lot smarter than me naturally, but they just didn't put their head down and really, make the sacrifices to do it.
After taking the MCAT, you do actually get, your interviews.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree that your resume or what you have as far as like your what you're presenting, what you've done, whether it be shadowing or volunteer, does that matter aside if your MCAT isn't as strong? I'm only going off of people that I know have actually gone to med school with what some would say maybe mediocre.
Sure. I mean, There are many avenues that you can pursue a career in medicine, and the MCAT isn't a test of how smart you are, it's how well you take a test. So if you do well on that test, that's great. You open you have doors open to the more quote unquote competitive medical schools, but that's it. If you don't have a great MCAT score, that doesn't mean you're not going to be a fantastic physician. There are many people that I went to medical school with who are terrible physicians that are just very smart, that do well on tests, but they have no ability to interact socially. They don't actually have the passion for medicine. It was just something that they happened to do because they were smart enough to do it. Whereas there's folks who, may have gone into overseas. There's Caribbean medical schools. You can do osteopathic medical schools. So there's a lot of different ways. If you really want to do it, that shouldn't really be the thing that's holding you back. Now, I don't know what it's out of now. It used to be out of 45. The average was 24. Is that still how it is for the MCAT now?
No,
30 to 34.
it's a different grading scale now.
Different grading scale.
Yeah.
They switched up something.
It's not out of 40 anymore. It's out of like 500 or something now. They completely changed it in 2015, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless, it's a difficult test to do really well in, and if you do well, that's great, good for you. But if you don't have the best scores, that doesn't mean you should be discouraged by pursuing that career. That would be.
I don't want to.
Jeff, can we have some other people
I'll
ask some
ask him
questions?
afterwards.
Yeah, we can
This
talk
guy-
afterwards, don't worry about
This
it.
guy's had a question for a minute.
This is for you.
Yes,
what
sir.
was your GPA in your undergrad, and did you?
I don't even remember, to be honest. I would tell you, yeah, it was good.
Did you do a lot of volunteering or shadowing?
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of maybe how many hours or so you did?
Oh man, a lot. I was busy, man. I was an RA. I was the president of the largest community service organization. I did bench research. I tutored. So I did a lot of stuff in college. I mean, it was a busy time for me. And when I wasn't studying, I was doing something else to try to get myself competitive. And then the same thing, I shadowed as well too. I would work in free clinics because you want to you want to show these admissions officers that you really want to do it. So yeah, so I'm from LA, and the big hospital next to us was Cedars-Sinai. So I did a summer program where I basically would wake up super early in the morning and then shadow a bunch of doctors and medical students and get my feet wet. And that was when I was an undergrad. And then I would volunteer at free health clinics in the LA area and do intake interviewing for a lot of the patients, so we can sort of set up what it would take for the doctors that eventually saw them, kind of streamline the process of it for them. So you got to find those things that'll help you become a competitive applicant, and they're everywhere. I mean, there's hospitals here. You can go to Highland. You can go to whatever else is. I know
Berkeley,
Highland.
there's a free clinic in Berkeley.
Yeah, of course.
Let me take one more question. Yeah, you've had your hand up a bunch.
University of San Francisco.
To the second part of the question would be, I guess, if you were to describe your average day, what would it be? I got a cup of coffee and for everyone, just so that to get an idea of what is it that you do, as opposed to the general, this is I do this.
Yeah, you want me to go first? I have kind of an unusual nursing job because I'm out in the field. So I go get a cup of coffee. I drive to my first patient's house. I have, in general, about 2 hours to see that patient, get them everything they need, any meds, any refills, change their plan of care, and chart, and then get to my next patient's house. So I see about 4 people a day, unless they're not doing well. If they're not feeling well, I have the privilege of just saying, I'm not going to leave yet, and staying. So I'm generally in their house about 30 minutes, but I can be in their house for 8 hours if they need it.
So I wake up, check my email first thing, because I have my own practice, and see if anyone's canceled that day or needs to come in, or some kind of scheduling thing that I might need to fill my day up. I don't have a secretary, so if I have patients cancel, I want to get other people in off a list, cancellation list. They get to work. Hopefully Ansel's clean my table, right? And then only if it's Wednesdays, he cleans my table. And then I see patients every hour. They come in. We sit down, go through how they're doing, what's been bugging them, do some tests, treat them, make sure I do my documentation, schedule them, kind of keep going until whenever my day ends, either at 2 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and then make some phone calls, fax physicians to get orders or x-rays or things like that throughout the day. So that's kind of my day.
Unfortunately, I don't have as regimented of a schedule. When you become an ER doctor, you sort of sign up for poor sleep hours and messed up circadian rhythms going into it. So, for example, tomorrow I'm working at 7 a.m. and then Saturday I'm working at 11 p.m. And so we work shifts between 8 to 12 hours, and you show up and you go home when your shift's over. So whenever you show up to work, you have to be prepared to see whatever shows up, basically. So for, from a trauma to meningococcemia to, a kid to an elderly person, you have to know the gamut. You have to have a pretty wide kind of breadth of knowledge, and then my job is to basically make sure that they get better. If I think they need to stay in the hospital, then I keep them in the hospital. If I think they're okay to go home, then I send them home. If I need to call a consultant, for example, a cardiologist or a GI doctor or a surgeon, I call them and tell them what the case is, and then we discuss it. And then, obviously, the tenet that we agree to when we graduate is do no harm. It's the Hippocratic Oath. So you want to make sure that your patients leave you better than what they came in, and that's it. So I mean, it's intense. You can't control who shows in or what they come in with. You just have to be prepared.
I cover 1 inpatient hospital, 10 nursing facilities, and a clinic. I don't have to hit them all in one day, so the week sort of gets spaced out on the acuity of the patient. So patients that are most recently discharged from the hospital or a new consult, I usually do the follow-ups of patients that were seen in the hospital by our physicians, and then I go to make sure wherever they are, whether it's still in the hospital or in the skilled nursing facility or in our clinic for ambulatory patients, to make sure that they're on the right antibiotic regimen, that they're not having any adverse effects, that we continue monitoring their labs. So each day is different, but like today, I was only at 2 facilities, and I think I saw 10 people. Other days I'll hit 5 facilities and see 25. So it's a lot of driving sometimes. And it's like what he said, you don't really know what you're going to get. Sometimes some patients take longer than others. It's true for everybody here.
We are out of time. I don't know if you guys want to stick around for a minute afterwards while people can talk to you. But I think we're going to do that. I just wanted to say thank you so much. If we can clap. Yeah, and I wanted to add, we don't have very many resources here for pre-health majors. So thank you so much for coming and talking to us. This is brilliant. And yeah, we really appreciate you guys coming in. And thank you all for coming.